Season 3 of The Pass is here. I know it's long overdue. We have a new intro. We still got the same content. Well, actually, it's a little bit of new content because there's new things going on in 2019. So buckle up. We got a lot of things to talk about on The Pass. What is up? What's going on, y'all? This is The Pass Podcast. I'm your host, BT. Hope everyone's doing well today. I will go ahead and get the small stuff out of the way, and then we'll get into the big stuff because I have been very sluggish or slackish in podcasting, and I'm not putting that on anybody but me. There were some things that I was doing to benefit the podcast. One of those being getting a little bit of content, aka the title of this podcast. So I'm gonna definitely make sure that I talk about that story or that viewing early on before I go too far into the topics on hand. But I hope everyone, as I mentioned, I hope everyone is doing well today. This will be an interesting show because a lot of the content is improv. A lot of it is actual information. So I'm going to be back and forth. You're going to hear a lot of ruffling of pages, which normally I don't do. But of course, when you got things, you make what you got work. So that's just how we're doing it. But as you are able to read in the show notes, the links are listed for all of the brands, sponsors, companies who have been supporting me, other podcasters who I've supported, and all of their input and feedback has and is appreciated by far. So we're not going to really hold any time. I'm going to go ahead and hit sports first. First up is the regular season is almost closing in. Most teams have, I'd say, give or take, for the NBA, you're looking at 5 to 6 games, if at most. Let's see, you got 56 to 19, so you're looking at 65. So yeah, we'll say for the sake of the conversation about 7 games at max. And right now, it's kind of been the East is still a battle. Charlotte and Miami are still trying to fight for the 8 seed. Detroit's been playing a little so you know how they do. Brooklyn is looking like they're going to get into their spot. As of right now, it is confirmed that the Bucks, the Raptors, the 76ers, the Pacers, and the Celtics have all clinched from what I'm looking at on this list. And as of right now, the Warriors, the Nuggets, the Blazers, the Houston Rockets, and I felt that coming. And the LA Clippers have all clinched in the West. Doc Rivers was able to, and I thought it was interesting because I did find this when it first hit my feed from Bleacher Report, that as soon as the Clippers had clinched their playoff spot, that Doc Rivers was able to go back and get, as they call it, get the receipts, because it was stated on most platforms. And, NBA kind of had them projected as winning 33 games. Charles Barkley had them projected to win 33 games. And here they are clinching a spot in the playoffs with 45 wins. And they still have another 7 games to go. So, I mean, it's been a good run for them. Because we've been so behind on podcasts, and I'll go ahead and talk about it now. The Lakers have been mathematically eliminated, as well as the Timberwolves. So right now, the only team that's really fighting for a spot in the West is Sacramento. So I bring up the LA situation, or I bring up the Lakers, because it's ironic that the team that they lost to was the Brooklyn Nets, who has D'Angelo Russell. And if we all remember from a while back, D'Angelo Russell was in that conversation of he was toxic to the locker room. He wasn't helpful, a valuable asset. We're going to let him go. And letting him go was what kind of opened up the window of them getting Lonzo Ball, because you really couldn't have Lonzo and D'Angelo playing together with the lineup they had. Now, D'Angelo and the other guard, I can't think of his name. I'm sorry, Brandon Ingram. Those two is one thing, but having Lonzo and D'Angelo, it wouldn't have really worked very well. And obviously, it's more ironic now because here it is, Nick Young doesn't even play for the team anymore. So all of those things come into play, and it's something to just look at with that lineup. The big talk right now. Well, there are two big but small talks from the NBA, and I'm going to get into those, and then I'll get into the topic I have from the NBA to continue this. The MVP talk is starting to really rise now that we're getting to the home stretch. The Houston Rockets played against the Milwaukee Bucks. Bucks won the game, but most importantly, Giannis had the better game between the two of them. They did a Q&A between some of the analysts on the starters, and they all were just about in unison in thinking that Giannis should get MVP this year. I'm going to be odd in what I'm going to say, because normally when people looking at me as a Houston fan, it's automatically, okay, you're going to pick James Harden. But I would actually have to say this has been Giannis's year. Giannis Antetokounmpo has been playing a very solid basketball game. And a question that came up in the midst of all of this was, even without Giannis being in the conversation or with the MVP talk, it was who was a better scorer in their prime. And the contestants were, or the players were Gilbert Arenas and James Harden. Gilbert Arenas in his prime, Agent Zero, was nasty. You say whatever you want. It was even down to the talk of Gilbert could shoot. I mean, it wasn't just he kind of could shoot. No pun intended, he had a burner. He could hit a three at any point, and you could get a solid 17-point run from just him alone. So that conversation was big, but I would personally say I think it was Harden. Now, that one I'm going to be biased. I'll say Harden all day. And Harden needed Houston more than Houston needed Harden. And I know that's crazy to say, but James Harden wouldn't be doing a lot of what he's doing now in Oklahoma because he really wasn't set up or in a position to be a starter there. But that's just all, that's all talk. That's just what we're seeing and how it's just kind of panned out. But him being in Houston, it worked for his gameplay and the style of play he has. And he kind of quietly got transformed into a point guard, and it generated some very interesting lineups when you had the Chris Paul, James Harden backcourt, and how that was all going to work out. So like I said, I'm giving that conversation its fair shake. And I'm sorry, I do want to mention on the East, Washington is still in the hunt. So I guess it's a matter of they would really have to win out, and some teams would have to lose for that to go differently. So we talked about the standings as of right now. We talked about the MVP race. I do want to mention the rookie race. The rookie race is kind of a two-man race. To say it's a two-man race with a wild card or wild horse being Marvin Bagley. The two-man race is Trae Young and Luka Doncic. Luka Doncic had a good start to this season. The beginning of this season has been all Luka. We were talking about Luka Doncic for the longest time because it was always looked at and obvious that once Dirk retires, he's pretty much being put in that position. Well, now with them getting Kristaps Porzingis, even though he hasn't played this year or won't be playing this year, and letting go Dennis Smith, it's put a bit of a heavier workload on him, and it's also made a shift in the games more evident. And it's even more clear to witness when you look at the lineups now if you look at Atlanta's lineup with Trae Young. When Trae Young got in the league, Trae Young was gun first. I mean, he was gunning from everywhere that he could because both players, and this was talked about too on the starters, both players were given a green light. No one's going to argue that. No one's going to deny that whatsoever. But what became clear is that Trae Young had to learn when to shoot and when to play. And I think now he's learning how to be a better playmaker since all of this, since the season has progressed. Granted, it's near the end of the season, but it's never too late to learn. Because Atlanta did, like I said, Atlanta went on a bit of a good play for a while. They won 3 straight as of right now. But you just got to look at it as, both teams, it was kind of clear this was definitely going to be a rebuilding year for both teams. Dallas 29-45, Atlanta 27-48. And I always like to mention this because this is how interesting the NBA is. If you were to take the Spurs, who are the 8th seed right now in the West, and put them in the East, they would actually be a 6th seed. That's how, as far as wins, losses, and that's why I think they're still trying to figure out this whole unseeded or non-conference playoff format, which, we'll believe it when we see it, but it's something that's been talked about for a while. So that's what I have on the NBA, the season itself. One player that always is talked about is Lonzo Ball, with, adding to it LeVar Ball. And I recently, so this story is a bit behind, but it's kind of made it clear that the relationship wasn't working out between Lonzo, LeVar, and the Big Baller Brand. Big Baller Brand, one of the co-founders, had taken $1.5 million from Lonzo Ball's personal and business account. Alan Foster, who is a friend of Lonzo's father and owns part of the Baller Brand, used his business and personal finance to enrich himself. As a result, because of that, Lonzo decided to break ties with Big Baller Brand. You think that, okay, he did that, no big deal. But I'm not gonna really read the story because I'm gonna kind of point some things out as to how ironic a story evolves. So first you have Lonzo playing with the Lakers. He's, going through the season. Season one the best. It kind of was evident that a lot of players were going to sit out the rest of the year or just rest and just prepare for next season. Okay, cool. No biggie. Fast forward, push a couple days ahead. It was, I think LeBron was out, Brandon Ingram was out, Lonzo came up. Lonzo, they was like, well, we're going to sit Lonzo for the rest of the season. We're not going to take any chances, things of that nature. Story then comes out of the possibility that Lonzo's shoes may have been why he was having problems. I think it was his ankle, if I remember correctly, and it might be in this article, but I'm just kind of paraphrasing because I don't want to article y'all to death, but I just wanted to, kind of point out how interesting and how ironic it was. Let's see, because I don't think they have it on here. They probably don't. And this is like a very drawn out story because this is all based on more behind the scenes stuff. But in hindsight, it's mainly, and then an article about Lonzo and the break from Big Baller Brand is important because even with that, the individual, they needed to. I think LeVar has been forced to get a reality with the Big Baller Brand. Just telling it like it is. But Lonzo, they said it was a possibility that his shoes could have been why he was having problems with his ankles. And so this story comes up about the $1.5 million being randomly gone. And it then turned to him saying, you know what, I'm cutting ties with Big Baller Brand. Most recently, today, as of today, they showed a picture of a tattoo that Lonzo has of Big Baller Brand being redone to look like 3 dice, which is just that proof of I'm making everyone aware that I'm moving on because it's not the best business for me to work with this company. But it also says something that I think a lot of people, including myself, are glad to see. and that is that Lonzo is finally doing it on his own. Lonzo, LaMelo, and LiAngelo have all been under LeVar's umbrella. All of them have made their own decisions, and each of their own decisions, they have all been making decisions based on what their dad saw was the best interest. And they never were taking time to figure out what their personal interest or personal preference was. For instance, LaMelo Ball should not have went to play overseas. It's not even about the college eligibility. None of that matters to this. In the case of his career and him trying to go to college, because technically speaking, I mean, he would have graduated this year anyway, because him and the other guy who was at Chino Hills, I can't think of his name, they both were, I mean, they could ball. I mean, tell them like it is. I mean, you thinking that their freshman year, they were playing with one of the best guards in the country at that time in Lonzo. And I'm taking nothing away from LiAngelo, but I'm going to get to him in a second. But LaMelo, here it is. His, freshman year goes okay. His sophomore year is pretty good. Junior year, they say, you know what? Pull him from school. He's going to play overseas. He's going to be homeschooled. While he's being homeschooled, I'm going to figure out what to do with him basketball. Basketball-wise, it comes up. He's going to Lithuania, him and his brother. And they go over to Lithuania, play a couple months, and then they're back in the States. And then, of course, the JBA League comes up, which I'm going to be 100% honest, and I've said this on the show, and I feel bad because I always bring this up. But I feel like they're not going to bring this. I feel like the league died before it grew. And it died because it was trying to work on things on its own, which I don't have the article to talk about this, but it is talked about, or it's a possibility that the Alliance or American Alliance Football or American Alliance League could possibly be trying to get help from the NFL because they can't fund their own league. Even with the money that they got from the hockey owner, that's still, I mean, there's a lot of non-branding that's involved. And I'm segueing a little bit, but I'm gonna come back to the Ball family. LeVar's brand of Big Baller Brand was strictly promoted on its own. There wasn't any backing from the NBA. Even with the NBA, not the NBA, even with endorsers like Nike, Adidas, Reebok, trying to come to Lonzo to get shoes, he was, I'm going to sell the Big Baller Brand shoe. I don't feel like that was his answer. That was the business PR answer, but that's neither here nor there. So here you are, you get you got LaMelo, you got Lonzo, you got LaMelo. LaMelo ends up having to, he misses that year. Then it's, he's pointing out and making it evident he wants to go to high school. So his dad sets it up, gets him into a high school, gets him at a pretty good high school at Spire Academy. Spire Academy has had quite, they're not really big on the map when it comes to games as far as like any prospects. But in the same token, you have guys, the guys who are on that team can play. For the most part, they had a pretty good season. And it even came down to certain teams not wanting to play against Spire because of them not wanting to take that risk on losing their chance of playing in the Geico High School championship game, which I'm all for that 100%. So you have that story with LaMelo. LaMelo ends up, being the 13th best player in high school with no college offers. And we know why. Then you go to LiAngelo, who everyone knows of the Chinese, the stealing incident. That could have gone 10,000 different ways. I don't know why I said 1,000, but they could have gone 10,000 different ways. It ends up, LiAngelo gets pulled from UCLA altogether. He goes with his brother to play basketball. He initially tries to get into the NBA. That path didn't work. The NBA teams weren't really looking at him. He wasn't high on anyone's radar for last year's draft. Just telling it like it is. He tries to go to like another league. the games or the places where he should have been playing to really get himself out there, he wasn't. I personally would say because they were in LA, and now that I've watched more videos of their games played, Rico Hines would have been something resourceful for him to use to possibly get to the next level. Never happened, and then it turned into the waiting game. So now here it is, your second year, your year removed, you could have been at UCLA working on your basketball game. Because then what can happen is with most players, even if you don't leave school your freshman year, you have some years that you can build up and say, you know what, I'm going to go ahead, go to this, work on my game all season, and then prepare for the NBA by my junior, maybe senior year. But instead of all that being done, LeVar just comes in and makes reckless decisions, and things just have fallen apart. So now with him severing ties, it's a strong chance that the other two brothers may sever ties. We don't know yet because LaMelo still has to figure out what he's going to do this offseason, if he's going to play overseas again or if it's going to be what his options are college-wise. Because they even talked about this on the All-American game yesterday in saying that they feel like he should go and play. But the tough part is the NCAA kind of has to abide by rules, and they can't bend or be flexible with rules as an exception. So that's that for the Lonzo story as far as everything that went down. Next up, and I have my handy dandy bracket that I never like to. I like doing these brackets, but they're always challenging to do because trying to pick the right teams is next to impossible. I'm not even going to look at my actual bracket because I know it looks a hot mess right now. So we'll just look at where we are right now. I actually was talking with an individual yesterday who mentioned one of the teams to look out for in this bracket is Texas Tech. I actually can agree with that. Going through and looking at all the teams that are in Duke, Virginia Tech, LSU, Michigan State, Gonzaga, Florida State, Texas Tech, Michigan, Virginia, Oregon, Purdue, Tennessee, UNC, Auburn, Houston, and Kentucky. Teams that scare me the most, in all fairness, are going to be UNC, Duke with a question mark, Michigan State, Texas Tech, and obviously Kentucky. A lot of people have said Houston because there's a strong chance that Houston could upset Kentucky. I'm going to go ahead and do my Final Four picks now. And it's probably going to be far from what I wrote on my list. I don't feel like it's going to be all ones. I'm going to say Texas Tech, Duke. Texas Tech and Duke are going to play in one game. The other Final Four matchup is going to be, and this might shock people, Tennessee playing Kentucky. We're going to get that SEC matchup again. Either Tennessee playing Kentucky or Tennessee playing UNC. UNC scares me because UNC can play it at a high level at any point. I'm going to say this about Duke, and I'm going to be as clear as I can because I've watched them in action a little bit more with the tournament kind of carrying along. Duke can shoot themselves into a game, but they'll also find a way to shoot themselves out of a game. I was talking. Someone mentioned this to me yesterday, and it's important to note in looking at Duke. Duke has a very small rotation. They've always had a small rotation as far as they may go 7 or 8 deep in their lineup. They're not going to go to the end of the bench. The only time the end of the bench players are coming in is, hey, we got a couple minutes left. Scrub time, come in, get your run. This might be a junior, senior year, but next year is your chance to shine. So I like Duke's chances, but the biggest thing is, and what is never really mentioned or talked about with basketball, but I say it because y'all know I'm always be honest, is when a team plays, when a player plays what's called bully ball. Bully ball can make or break a lot of teams. And an example of this is Zion. Zion is a very athletic player. I'm not going to take any away from him athletically. If I were to play him in a basketball game right now, I would be surprised if I scored a basket, just being honest. But if he plays bully ball, Virginia Tech can get away with whatever he's going to do. He going to score against Virginia Tech. It's the LSU or Michigan State matchup that could be a problem because a lot of those guys at LSU has nothing to lose. And I say nothing to lose because of the incident we talked about with Will Wade. I thought it was kind of interesting because the guy who was involved, Smart, is still playing. I'm putting this out into the early parts of the universe, and honesty, he's gone. He's not staying at LSU after this year. They're going to bring all of this up after he's gone. Just telling you my personal hot take on it. But yeah, Duke is the team that everyone's looking at as like they should really be able to pull it off, but it's shooting that's going to make or break them. And also based on their bully ball play with playing against Emmett Williams and Nazir Reed, both at LSU, who can battle. And I know it's rough because it sounds like I'm putting LSU ahead of Michigan State. But even if Michigan State gets there, Michigan State has one thing that Duke does not have, and that's experience. So I'm just, take it or leave it. So that's my quick dive into sports as a whole, with just mainly from the basketball aspect. Right now, football is on idle because we're waiting on the draft. We don't know where anyone's going. Everyone's looking at the possibility that Kyle Murray will probably be the number one pick, which means if Arizona drafts him, Charles Rosen will probably get traded. Talks are mentioning that he may be going to the Giants, but of course then that questions what's going to happen with Eli. So that's why it's all kind of being looked at and possibly scoped and broken down as of right now. In our world of stuff, I'm going to give my feedback last because I want to talk about the Man Listen viewing that I was able to witness this weekend, or this past weekend rather. Before I get into that though, I do want to talk about, since it has come and gone, a couple of, I'm gonna call this, I guess you can say this is Apple being Apple. And I'm only using the Apple being Apple reference because it's no surprise of Apple doing what they did. But I also think it's tough because as consumers, there are things that you look for companies to do right or understand, but they don't do it. And this is an example. And I'm sounding critical or nitpicking, but I'm just pointing out the observation of the overall story. So, two things that Apple decided to do is they made some iPad. They unveiled some iPad products and they unveiled some AirPods products. So what Apple did was they went ahead, and this was last week. They brought out the Apple 10. They brought out the 10.5-inch iPad Air. Like they got a facelift. Where they went ahead and removed they went with the similar format of the original of the newer iPad Pros, where it has that look and style. Their main, to put it fair, discard what I just said about the iPad Air. Basically what they did was they did the iPad Air, they did the iPad Mini. They brought out a newer version of the iPad Mini, and they made both of these iPads compatible with the Apple Pencil. Now, first thing I'm going to go ahead and clear up, because I want it to be clear and understood. This is for the Apple Pencil version 1, not version 2. Version 2 will only work with those devices that are USB-C chargers, as well as they're set up so that the Apple Pencil 2, when you charge it, you can just pop it right on top of the iPad and it charges. These iPads don't do that. These iPads are your convenient iPad mini and iPad Air. The iPad mini, as I've told y'all before, I have the mini 4 edition. And what was interesting with that version is it only had one size, which was 128 gigs. Even in the amount of time of me owning the iPad, I won't get anywhere close to filling this iPad. There's no need of me lying to myself or fooling myself into thinking otherwise. So they brought out the Air, which is supposed to have a 70% performance boost. They put the A12 chip in it. Then you're looking at the 7.9 inch iPad mini, which has the same specs as far as that A12 Bionic chip. And it's going to have the screen is supposed to be 25% brighter. And it's going to support the Apple Pencil. That's why I mentioned, like, both of these devices, their main focus or their main push was we wanted to work with the Apple Pencil. Because if you really look at it right now, the Apple Pencil, the first edition, can't be used with much. They did not do any updates to the Apple to the iPad mini 4th generation to make it work. And with all of the new phones that have released, are releasing, or have the ability to do so, the Pencil can't work with any of the phones. It's primarily a pad-based product. But it's a pad-based product based on the iPad Pros that previously were out, the new iPads that just came out, iPad Pros, the iPad Air, and the iPad Mini. I know there was like a whole lot of pads and pods, but I just want to make sure I give all of that information so that everyone understands like where and what the objective was. And both the Air and the Mini are going to be in 64 and 256 gig storages. Again, 64 gigs, not going to be enough in most cases. 256 is going to be too many, but if you're going to play the better safe than sorry, I would go along with it. The price range it starts off at $399. If you want to add cellular to that model, it is $529. The iPad Air, and that's for the iPad Mini. The iPad Air starts at $500 or $629 if you want Wi-Fi and data. That's kind of the nicest way of putting the discussion in the iPad part. AirPods got a facelift too. The AirPods got the facelift that people will value, but it didn't get the update that people will appreciate. The one that would be appreciated, the one that's valued, is you can wirelessly charge them. Now you no longer have to worry with running to a cord to charge your AirPods. You can now, if you have one of your Qi chargers, I'm probably mispronouncing it because I always call it Key. I don't know why. But a Qi charger charging pad, you can place it on the pad, it'll charge. The alert for your charging is now outside of the case. And there are 3 variations that were brought out for this. They brought out the original AirPods that we all know and love. That case is the non-wireless charging case. Those are still $160. If you want the one with the wireless charging case, it is $200. $40 difference. Give it time. I feel like it'll change, my opinion. But they also bring out strictly the wireless charging case for, I think it was 70 or 80. I want to say it's 70. I'm sorry, 80. The newer AirPods don't come in black. That was what people wish they could have gotten. It does have a better battery life from what we're being told. It does support the Hey Lady, I'm not going to say her name, but Siri, it supports that. Let's see, they support wireless charging if you buy them with the new wireless charging case. They obviously, all of this being done, there was no update, no information related to the AirPower. AirPower was introduced as a concept in September of 2017. We're almost 2 years away from that. Something to think about. These AirPods are running a different chip. They're using the H1 chip. It is supposed to have 50% more talk time, hands-free, Hey Lady, and the option of the wireless charging case. I will say this to anyone as a consumer and as an honest user of AirPods. If you have AirPods that are functioning just fine and there are no issues, do not upgrade to the new set. That's my personal opinion. And that's just being a smart consumer. And there's two reasons I say this. One, this is the first batch. You gotta let the kinks be worked out from the first batch. I didn't get my first set of AirPods until last year. And they did the announcement talking about AirPods in 2017. So just, that's something to think about. My other thing is, it's going to factor in to whether the wireless option is a big deal for you if and only if you really are a wireless charger user, because not everyone charges wirelessly. A lot of people didn't even know they had the ability to charge things wireless. Before I had my XS Max, I had the iPhone 7 Plus. 7 Plus didn't have wireless charging, so I didn't miss anything. When I got the Max and I realized I could do it, once I learned it was a thing, I said, "Oh, this is kind of cool," and I've stuck with it since, and it's worked. So those were the secret unveilings or the anonymous announcements that happened outside of Apple's main event. Because as we know, as we talked about a couple episodes back, Samsung did their unveiling of the Galaxy S10. Looks like a great phone, especially with the ability to charge on it. Like the phone itself can function as a wireless charger, which I think is pretty dope. Also, this is an AirPod tip, and I'm telling this to people because I had to do this the day after I bought my AirPods. And I think I might have picked up a case when after not too long, probably within a week of buying them. Do not buy a set of AirPods and not put them in some type of case. You have spent $160 on a pair of AirPods that are sitting in a vulnerable case that can drop from feet, from high depths to the ground. Anyone who was to look at my AirPods case, they wouldn't even know or realize that I've had mine for as long as I have. And part of it is because I make sure they're in a case. There's not even a question or debate. Even my old, not even say, I guess they're kind of old. Even owning my Power Beats by Beats by Dre, I have those. When I don't use them, they sit in the case. Like right now, they're sitting on my bed, but I've learned from previous experiences, do not sit them on a bed by yourself or just at a random stint, because if you roll over and it breaks, that's it. I make sure I keep them in their case. Cases sound uncomfortable and they're annoying, but cases can save you hundreds of dollars on products. That's all I'm going to say. Do with that as you will. but I wanted to get it out of the way. Now to the meat and potatoes that actually occurred this past Monday. And this is kind of why I'm glad the show was able to be delayed a little bit, because I want to break this down, but not break down too much time from the gist of what was shared. So as many of you may or may not be aware, Apple did an event. Let me be clear, because I was even being taught this personally on my own. This was not a keynote. There was no hardware that was released. Typically at keynote events, there are major announcements, there are major hardware enhancements that are coming. This was an event. So at this event, it talked about things software-wise that have arrived and that are coming. First things first, and I want to say this is on both Mac, because I think Mac got the update too, and I need to find it because I don't use it very often. Yes, they did. Okay. Mac and iOS users who have devices that are getting the latest updates, because I don't want to say all iOS devices, because obviously I have a old iPod Touch that's not going to get this update, because I think it's still back at like at 9, either 9 or 10. But anyway, the iOS update will be giving you a new look to News. News is supposed to have a more streamlined look and feel. I've shared this with people only because I can. News is from an on the whim perspective, because News is almost supposed to replace whatever other programs you get your news from. So if you already have Bleacher Report, you don't need News. If you already have CNN, you don't need News. But it's kind of like a gift and a curse in the sense that I have them, so I still use those. Programs to listen to and to get stories, because some stories that Bleacher Report gives, news that the news app from Apple is going to give it, but it's going to be like not too long after I've already read the story. So it's just my personal preference. But if you don't have a lot of apps on your phone, the News app did get a new update for your daily news or daily stories going on. Oprah made an appearance. Everything else happened, but Oprah made an appearance. Oprah's working with Apple on getting a process in place as far as with the utilizing how to get content to the masses in a better way. The Apple event, I have so many thoughts about it, because as the event kept going, I'm just sitting there and I'm like, this is all software, and this is all going to be just your main, plain, regular, schmegular stuff. And most of it was, but it wasn't, because they talked about Apple Card. Apple is bringing out their own credit card. They don't want to say it as a credit card, but it will be its own card. The card that they have is going to be exclusive because it is the physical card itself is titanium, but most of your transactions that you have the ability to do can all be done through your phone. Of course, the challenge is you got to have the newest phone or one of the later, like more recent phones to do it. Let me see. So you had the Apple Card, you had Apple Arcade, Apple TV is getting a facelift. Apple TV Plus was talked about. Definitely got its attention. And that was mainly what the Apple event was about. They kind of broke down what I'm sorry, a few things because I did forget. They do have a subscription service for the Apple Arcade, where if you want, I think it's $10 a month, you can play the games that they have available in Apple Arcade, which I think is good. The Apple Books, I'm probably going to be off when I say that. They are doing a subscription with Apple as far as if you want to read magazines. If you're paying, I think it's $10 a month, you can read different magazines and subscriptions through Apple. And because I don't do, because I personally don't do it, it's not something that I really was like in awe of, because it's not a program that I personally use. But I believe it's, if I'm not mistaken, correct. Like someone can mention this and correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe it is through the Books app that is built in. Because I think I'm almost tempted to say I removed the Books app from one of my devices, so that could be why it's not really a huge hit for me. But I know that's, and I'm not, it's not like I'm going white noise on y'all, like I'm really not knowing what I'm talking about, but I watched the event. Certain things of the event could be captivating and huge, but from my consumer perspective, I mean, I'm already using Apple Pay as it is. I'm not looking at getting the Apple Card, but it is good for those who want that alternative option. They are making it where funds with Apple Pay will be made available in a more timely manner. Let's see. Okay, here we go. The service that they did offer was Apple News Plus, and it was designed to provide access to hundreds of magazines and a handful of paywall news sources for $9.99 a month. Everyone that's on a family sharing plan can also access Apple News Plus for that $9.99 per month fee. I've already mentioned Apple Card. With Apple Card, you get the 1% cash back on purchases, 2% cash back for Apple Pay purchases, and 3% cash back on Apple purchases. So if you go to an Apple store, you buy the new AirPods, you get 3% cash back. And the money is made available right away. And you also see how much you would be projected to get for that. The end of that day, they give you whatever the amount cash back is, so you're not waiting a certain amount of time. So that's kind of overall what the Apple event was. Like I said, they had different creators who were involved. Steven Spielberg, J.J. Abrams, Oprah was there. There was no price announced for Apple TV Plus, but it is looking to be part of Apple TV's app in May. But that's where they're kind of getting with Oprah to try to get some ideas going and then generating massive big book clubs. That was where the Oprah factor comes in, because anything that Oprah's presenting, you know it's going to have a backing and a vibe to it in itself. So that's mainly all with that story. $71 billion later, 21st Century's Fox and Disney joined hands. This story has been talked about and fickled with for 15 months. Disney did go ahead and seal the deal on a $71 billion acquisition of 21st Century Fox. Disney took possession of 21st Century Fox at 12:02 a.m. on the 19th. Assets changing hands in the deal include 20th Century Fox, Fox Searchlight Pictures, Fox 2000 Pictures, Fox Family, and Fox Animation. Fox Television Creative Units, 20th Century Fox Television, FX Products, and Fox 21. FX Networks, National Geographic Partners, Fox Networks Group International, Star India, and Fox interests in Hulu, Tata Sky, and Endemol Shine Group. And it just kind of mainly just break down kind of some of the simple things regarding that. Big deal for Disney, even bigger deal for Fox. This could play into how shows are going to be curated or handled for upcoming platforms. But I wanted to give that one as a big acquisition, because I mean, anytime money's involved, to us, the everyday consumer, we may or may not care. But if a show comes on and it doesn't come with the proper bang bip pow that most people are expecting, you kind of know you may be in for a shocker in realizing why. So that is our stuff, but it's not the end, because I'm going to do something a little different for Pass the Message. Pass the Message and this closing part of stuff. This is going to cover the music sesh that I would have had because honestly, I have not really been finding a lot of music lately. I've been in study mode. Anyone who personally knows me knows that I am a tech whore to the core. And I emphasize that term loosely because there are a lot of things that I personally have left on the table for my future, and I'm not doing that anymore. So I wanted to I'm getting that out of my system now, but I'm also talking about something that is a little bit more intricate and a little bit more beneficial to realize. This past Saturday, I was invited to a screening or a viewing of a new show or a documentary called Man Listen, and that therein ties the title of the podcast. When you go into shows, or even if you haven't done research on something, you go in open-minded, ready for anything because you don't know what to expect. And I watched the show. I watched the screening, the documentary, and all I can say is that it opened my brain to something that I needed to really acknowledge. So I'm bringing this up to talk about the story itself, and I'm going to talk about my Pass the Message. The story talked about mental health in the African American community, but it was from the male perspective. They had a group of men who were all mainly sat down and asked open dialogue-based questions about their lives. When it first started, before it came on, the lady who invited me, I'm horrible with names, so don't hold me to that part. But I was given, you were kind of given like an overview of what to expect, what this story would be about, all of that information. And I'm working on being better with branding, so give me a sec. Nakia Cherie, she's with Quelly Legacy. That is the name of the group that did the program, and that was the name of the person who was kind of like the MC. Nakia Cherie. Because I didn't go up and actually talk with her afterward, but I did. I'm giving my take on this from my podcast. It was interesting to see men be vulnerable. And as a man who hasn't been very vulnerable, I accepted that very closely. They all gave their stories about what they went through, growing up, as far as if they were in a single parent home, both parents weren't around, whatever the case may have been. Even one of the gentlemen was mentioning how he had both parents, but it still was, he had a way of acting out that he did what he, went through what he went through. And each of them were able to make it clear that despite what they went through, they realized they could get out of it. The Black community has this perception or this idea and or analogy that if something is wrong, you just deal with it internally and you don't talk about it. Or you talk to those who you know, but you don't get help. Or you carry yourself like everything's okay, but you're not okay. And watching this full doc like story being told from start to finish, I couldn't do anything but just listen and really be a sponge to it, because it brought something to my attention that I never witnessed, never realized until I've talked to people I know, I've taken time to just understand life. And the guys who all spoke, like very well-rounded individuals, like all great men. Like personally, and I'm hoping that someone or one of you all have a chance to listen to this podcast. I would like to have y'all on the show. I'd even do a group session, like put the mic in the middle of the barbershop like y'all did. Like y'all had a barbershop convo and it was spot on. This was directed, produced, like all women were involved in the production and the processing, behind the scenes, which I think is phenomenal. Like women don't get their credit in various aspects. And this was a prime example of where I give credit where it's due. There were some other podcasters there, I believe. But I do know one podcaster who I am pushing the network with a little more. She's with the Creative Outsiders. Her name is Siobhan Mitchell. So I did, get some info from her, kind of do some networking. And if I'm putting government name and not supposed to, my bad, don't know, just being me. But obviously if you do cards just like I do, your name is your brand. So I've learned obviously over the years the importance of naming and branding, but that's all different. But she was, after they finished, she did go up to ask them different questions, as well as people from the audience ask good questions. There wasn't much of a time to do Q&A based on time, which is understandable. That's not even something I'm gonna pick or fickle over, because I've learned this after talking to someone who I know personally that has been like a big sister as well as like a massive mentor for me. Yoshiko was able to talk to me after I watched this and after I talked about just my life. But in watching this video and, networking, obviously, getting some business and learning a little bit more, I have been very relaxed on me and what I need to do. I talked about this in one of my blogs this past Monday. I've been looking for a void to be filled, and I've gone everywhere but the right place. And that's getting help, and that's getting counseling, and that's, seeking therapy. I finally decided, not this coming week, but the following week, that I'm going to get therapy or get help with the fact that I never took time to grieve my sister's passing. It's been 11 years. Last Tuesday of last week, I went to her gravesite, and I was emotional, and I was, there, and I was connected in the moment. But I was also still not in the place of feeling like I've moved on from it. And I know a lot of people in the family, a lot of my siblings may or may not have. I don't know. I haven't really been communicative with them because I've been just in my own, as I always like to call it, Taylor Allen. For years, that was just a reference I naturally used of Taylor Allen is my way of getting away and just kind of doing my own thing. But in reality, Taylor Allen was my black hole. And I've realized now, for me to get a lot of what I want to get done, I can't be on Taylor Allen. This podcast has stuck with me the way it has because I've always pushed in every way possible to give my best effort. Some days I've fallen short on that, and I've realized it in the production and in the content. Other days I'm here ready to go, talking it up, chalking it up, the whole nine. So I'm saying all of that to share, one, the documentary was great. I enjoyed it. I needed that documentary to really help to get this brand, get you all as a brand out there to people who I know. So I will make sure, even with me listening to the show notes, that I mention Quality Legacy, mention Miss Sherry, mention the Creative Outsiders. Like, I'm gonna make sure that's all mentioned, hashtagged, at mentions, etc. As I'm going back to listen to the show notes, because that's how important it is for me. As far as the individuals who were involved, if I need to get, or if people do get this, mention their name through the show, I'm all for doing that as well. I just want something like this to be done more often. And when I say something like this to be done more often, I mean Black men coming together and talking things out. A few weeks ago, and now shoot, it's been 3 weeks since I posted that. 3 weeks ago, I put up what I considered to be my dream podcast group. I want 4 or 5 guys on one show to know that it would be the craziest yet most insane sports talk. But I also realized too that I need conversations with guys on real life situations. What these men talked about were real life situations. I'm saying it because I can. I've never seen much in the street. I have no street knowledge at all. I'm not going to sit here and act like I do. I know how to get in my car and go somewhere, go home, keep it moving. Not much street involvement, because when I went places, I was too focused on where I was going. I never really would stop and be the intriguing, like, well, what's this and why is this going? Wasn't my business, didn't need to know, don't want to know. Now I'm more willing to be connected and understanding life, and also, finding that way to build with others. So that's what my gaining was from the show and from the event, is that men need to have those talks that y'all had on that show in a more consistent manner. And they may have been going on around me, and I've just been in my bubble. And this might be that first step of getting me out of that bubble, which I'm okay with. So that was the main hit of what I gathered. And, I look forward to, this going and progressing in every way possible. I mentioned, the people who were part of the show, but I also didn't mention that my friend Kim, who I've known, she has almost hit 20 years. Yeah, for about 20 years, Kim has been the sister and the best friend that I never realized I would have. We were talking, like, she's one of those people who, like, a lot of people who I'm friends with directly now, like, I can talk to them for a couple days and we hit each other up and it's cool. We can go months and not talk to each other. And if I say hey to her right now, or vice versa, it's literally like, oh, hey, what's going on, Brian? How you been? Blah, blah, blah. Kim set this all up for me as far as being able to go to this screening, because something like this I wouldn't have done on my own. And the people, the men and women who were there, even the vendors, everyone made it welcoming. And it was black. I mean, it was what I consider as black excellence. Like, that's what we need more of. Like, an event like that is something where you should have folks running, like, it should be packed to the back of that facility for the amount of people who needed to get and understand what was shared there from that documentary. Because the first thing it made me think of, which I haven't watched in a while, but I always like watching it, is Diary of a Retired Black Man. That's a different concept, don't get me wrong, but it has that same feel of women get together and they girl talk it up, but guys are afraid to be in the same area because we all want to just do our own thing, when in reality we need that time together. I went out of town a few weeks ago. I never would have known or expected that specific trip was what I needed to get my brain going the way it did. And I valued that conversation from that weekend to trickle through a lot of things that has helped me through for 2019. 2019 has been all about assessments. And if I'm throwing it past the message to you now as a way of saying it, value what's shared. If I can't get that through anybody's head, value what is shared with you. Because people don't have to take time to share a damn thing with you. They can keep it all to themselves. And that becomes selfish, but then it doesn't help us grow as a community. And I think that's why I hit the point that I did of passing my message to you all of me going to counseling and utilizing the resources I have in my job to do so. Because a lot of people don't do that. And I know for me, it has to be done in order to progressively be productive as a human being. So I'll just leave that at that, because I can go on and we'll never get the show finished. So I just wanted to get that in there, and I didn't want to, because I'll forget and I'll talk about other things and go all over the place, but I definitely want to talk about Man Listen. And I mean, that was, like I said, it was a spot on great show. Now for a lighter note, because this is where we always have our fun. This is the final piece that we're talking on, and this is our infamous Ass of the Week. Ass of the Week this week is no exception. Each week we get one that's always a wow, and this one is definitely no exception to the rule. This happened in the United Kingdom. Police in one United Kingdom county say a man was arrested for alleged drunk driving after he was reported by another driver. What makes this story stand out from any other drunk driving story is that the driver who made the report was also arrested for allegedly driving drunk. Officials with the Derbyshire Roads Policing Unit said, "You couldn't make this up. Very minor collision at the junction causing no damage. One driver suspects the other is drunk, so quite rightly calls us, forgetting he is also drunk. Both arrested, one blew 40 and the other 78, charged to court." According to the tweet, it all started with a collision that was described by police as very minor along the M1 motorway, which connects London to the northern part of England. One of the drivers called police after he suspected the other driver was driving drunk. When police arrived at the scene, a breathalyzer test was administered on both drivers. One of the drivers blew 40 micrograms per 100 millimeters per breath, while the other blew 78 micrograms per 100 millimeters per breath. The alcohol limit for drivers in the UK is 35 micrograms. Both drivers have since been charged. Police did not release the identity of either driver. As for the accident, police officials say it caused no damage. So this is I guess you can say this is Pass the Message Part 2. Before doing something stupid, think of what stupid thing you're doing. If you are stupid enough to call the police on someone based on an accident, or calling them based on someone being a drunk driver, and not knowing that you're drunk yourself, you may need to reevaluate that whole situation and think it all through. That is what I'm going to leave y'all with today. I'm not going to talk long like I normally do at the end of most shows, but I will say it feels good to be back. Our next show will be creative. That's all I can tell you. I don't want to give too much now. I just want to give a little teaser because that's only fair. But as always, thanks for tuning in. I appreciate the love and support. We're still getting Rely on BOT going, getting some designs done. Almost had my logo ready. Logo got shut down for professional reasons, and I don't need to explain too much into that. But we got work to do. As humans, we all have work to do. So until next time, y'all take it easy. The Pass signing out. Another episode is in the books. Thanks to everyone for tuning in. As I always share, if you'd like to get into podcasting, you can check out Spreaker.com. And if you're looking to invest in a microphone, or if you're looking to genuinely start with recording, I use the Blue Yeti microphone, but you may prefer to do the Samson Meteor. Just know that if it's your craft and it's something that you're meant to do it and do it well. That's my main thing to tell people about 2019. Do it and be reliable. Y'all take it easy.